No. Good evening, friends. This is the opening of the exhibition as well as a panel discussion. This exhibition had its premiere at Kathmandu as part of the Film South Asia. Film South Asia, some of the films are coming to Chennai as part of the TFSA. Therefore, we are going to see it from 11th at ACJ. And 6 films which are part of this exhibition, which was curated by Institute and the Film South Asia, are going to be screened here. The film which is going to follow this panel discussion is called Face Cover. And interestingly, this film, which deals with the Sri Lankan Tamil Muslim issue, happens around the same time when India was facing the huge hijab controversy. Therefore, India's hijab controversy and the film happens around the same time. For in that sense, we can have an analogous relationship with the film. This exhibition has been essentially curated by the participants. And the idea is, what are the methods through which we can break the stereotypes? Breaking the stereotypes cannot become another stereotypical example. We can't have one rhetoric to fight another rhetoric. To move beyond rhetoric and fighting stereotypes has been the major concern. And that, I think, has come out very well with this type of interesting, layered visual representation. Hence, it becomes so interesting. And as a journalist, first thing what we have to do is, are we sure of our reporting, whether it is respectful, whether it is hurting somebody's dignity? We rarely ask that question because for us, deadline becomes so overwhelming concern that we may not really respect the idea of dignity. This exhibition brings back the centrality of dignity. Hence, it becomes central. Thank you for coming. I'm requesting Lakshmi to moderate the session.
Yeah, thanks, Paneer. And may I request everyone to just come to the first few rows? We could maybe even then dispense with the mics. I think they're echoing a lot. So if everyone just comes up, we could just have a conversation, because that's the idea of this discussion also. I think they need a mic for recording. Okay, okay. Anyway, it's nice to see everyone's face. So, yeah, thank you all for coming despite the rain. And I'm very angry with Paneer because he didn't take the weather forecast seriously and plan this on the day when it's pouring like this. But anyhow, this is part of a series of conversations we're having across South Asia, and this is the first one outside Kathmandu. So it's really great to see all of you. So I'll just start this off by telling you a little bit about how this exhibition came about. It's part of a larger initiative of the South Asia Trust based in Kathmandu, of which Film South Asia is one part and the Institute is another part. Film South Asia basically, is a film festival, also travels around South Asia and encourages a discussion around visual imagery, around film, around topics of very current interest. The Institute does research and more in-depth forms of journalism. Both of them are connected very organically with the magazine Himal South Asian, which used to be brought out of Kathmandu. I edited it for a while before it moved to Colombo. And all of it is got a very strong thread of the region. So when you see exhibits from Sri Lanka, from Bangladesh, from different parts of India, from Nepal, the idea is again not a representation of SAARC countries' 8 exhibits, but looking at what are the commonalities, what do we face as a people in this region. And I'm hoping also the discussion here will have a lot of those elements. And I'd like Vaishna to talk about the, broadly speaking, Indian news media. I know that's a huge area, but I'll, let you choose what you'd like to speak about. The Indian news media and the way in which imagery around sexual violence or even gender is used. The ways in which stereotypes are reinforced, the way in which they're broken sometimes, the way in which certain cultural tropes have kind of gained a currency now. Uh, After that, Paneer will talk about the Tamil media in general, entertainment media as well, looking at cinema and the way in which women gender has been viewed. And then we'll have Arulmozhi, who's an advocate who has taken up a lot of cases of sexual violence, telling us about the ways in which laws are useful or not, the limitations and the possibilities of law in cases of crimes against women, sexual violence against women, including online abuse and so on. Because the idea again of these conversations is also to catalyze change and look at the ways in which we can weave together all these threads to look at possibilities of justice seeking, of healing, of dealing with trauma at individual and community levels. So that's really part of what this project is also about. And we're really very privileged to have all of you as speakers. And first, Vaishna, would you go? So maybe about 8 to 10 minutes. And
maybe less even, if I can finish. Pardon me while I refer to some notes I just took down, just to share some fairly startling numbers. One is that worldwide violence accounts for the most deaths. It's not disease and war, it's gender violence. But it also is the most overlooked act of violence. And that, I think, is in itself sort of sets the tone for why this topic needs to be discussed urgently. One number, just to sort of drive this point home, between 2011 and 2015, India recorded over 40,000 dowry deaths alone. And remember, dowry deaths are only one part of a kind of gender death. There are so many kinds of gender-related violence. And that number, 40,000, was 10 times more than the combined fatalities which were recorded in Kashmir conflicts, Naxalite violence, Northeast insurgency violence, all of that put together. And yet, what do we see in the news? What does media report? What are we talking about? So that brings us to the reason why Lakshmi spoke of the centrality of what role media can play in the whole subject of gender violence. When I said that dowry violence is just one, all of you know this, but just to again drive the point home, female infanticide, honor killings, acid attacks, stove deaths, dowry deaths, which are often stove deaths, murders by rejected suitors, unbelievable, but just in Tamil Nadu alone, all the time, a young man rejected by the woman he loves, the young woman he loves, kills her as in response. Wife beatings, rapists who rape but also kill in order that their rape might not be reported. Assault by family men for disobedience, just plain disobedience. I think all of you remember the case not so long ago of that young girl in Madhya Pradesh who chose to wear jeans, and her uncles objected. So they beat her up, and they beat her up so badly she died, and then they just threw her body over a bridge. It was the finding of the body that finally they could trace the crime back to her own uncles, and the dispute was as minor as her wanting to wear jeans. So family members who do violence on women just for ordinary things like disobedience, not obeying their dress rules, not obeying their sort of clan rules, And of course, the other things like trafficking, sexual trafficking, etc., etc. So the shapes that violence takes, gender violence takes, are very, very many. And how do you put all this together into the idea of what it represents as a society, right? And we are now talking about South Asia, and I think South Asia represents one of the highest numbers of sexual violence. And the thing about sexual violence in South Asia is that it is part of the culture. So the culture of these countries makes sexual violence a legitimate violence. And this is ingrained so much in men and in women as well, that the need to talk against it, to speak up against it, and to protest it becomes an act of courage in itself, simply because many women accept that this is their due in life, and that they ought not to protest it. And I'll quote a small example. This is something that all of you would have seen in your own households, but I'm speaking from personal experience. I had a woman who used to come and work in our house, whose husband would beat her, would always beat her. And so once a week she'd come to work, black and blue, there were visible wounds, and she was in pain. Often she couldn't walk, she'd be limping. And we would ask her why she doesn't leave him, why she doesn't complain to the police about him. It was astonishing. Her answer was astonishing. She would respond by telling us, Purushan Danema, Purushan Adippa, Purushan Adichidna, correct. In Tamil, basically, it means that he's my husband. He has the right to beat me. That is how much violence is ingrained. And I'm not sharing anything new. All of you are aware of these things. So the cultural myth that it's okay to hit women because women don't matter perpetuates violence in South Asia. I want to talk about media, but it's a very difficult for me to make that transition, because you see, can we say that media, as represented by social media, that very powerful project that we see running behind us, or cinema, which Paneerselvam is going to talk about later on, can we assume that these mediums or mainstream media that I represent, I work for a magazine, do we say that the ways in which sexual violence is depicted or written about or reported, are they worsening the situation? Are they creating the situation? These are complex questions, but there are no simplistic answers, right? So I can't easily say that the depiction of gender violence in cinema perpetuates gender violence in society, nor can I say that the absence of responsible reporting in media perpetuates it. However, the important sort of common baseline that connects all of these things is the fact that in the ways in which we depict gender violence, either in cinema or in the ways in which we report it in media, we tend to normalize it. And when we normalize it, it becomes so matter of fact that it stops standing out, which is why we go back to what I initially said, that the enormous numbers of cases of gender violence, but they don't make an impact. We end up not talking about it. We talk much more about war-related deaths than we do about this, because of this aspect of normalization. And there, it's interesting because you see, media is guilty of one thing. Mainstream media is guilty of one thing. It tends to report sexual violence in a very segmented way. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say this, that it picks and chooses what it will report. So invariably, there are cases, it's not as if one rape is worse than the other, or one wife beating is worse than the other, or one murder of a wife or a girlfriend is worse than another. But media invariably picks and chooses what it will write about. And there are elements, there might be a politician involved, the heinousness of the crime may be very, very high. And in recent times, of course, crimes which are picked up by social media and it becomes viral, so then you end up reporting about it. We end up giving special status to one particular crime when it's just part of a systemic failure, um, a systemic, what's the word? A systemic crime against women, but we end up picking one of them. However, I think it would be equally unrealistic of me to imagine that this will not happen, that somehow in the ways in which a newspaper or magazine reports sexual crimes, that this sort of picking and choosing will not happen. I don't think I can say that. That would be unrealistic on my part, because at the end of the day, you have so many pages, you have enormous amounts of news coming at you, and you decide what you're going to write about. It's a spot decision, as Paneer Selvam will tell you invariably at the last minute what he spoke of, the deadline that he spoke of, and you end up picking one crime to report on. You pick that Himachal Pradesh, the girl who was working as a receptionist and who was asked to sell her body, and then when she refused, she was murdered, right? That's certainly not a one-off crime. It's happening all the time, but it's happening not reported by the media. So the one thing that we can do, besides obvious things about reporting about sexual crimes, of course, we have to respect the victim, as Paneer said. There are basic rules. You don't name the person. We are moving towards better language. We avoid saying victim. We try and say that, that they are survivors. Even here, women have opinions. They don't want to be known as survivors sometimes. They say, hello, I was a victim, acknowledge me. So let the woman decide how she would like to be represented. There should not be hard and fast rules. There should not be lazy reporting. And that brings me to the aspect of the visuals which accompany such stories. There are set graphics. There is that girl cowering in a corner, covering her face, sort of frightened, alone. And that is a very common image which will be used with every report of rape invariably. It's one of those mass-generated graphics that are available for free. You download it and put it on. But invariably, it ends up stereotyping the victim, where the victim is shown always as frightened, as helpless, as having no choices, and worst, covering her face. So that sense of shame that invariably attaches itself to the woman rather than to the criminal, the person who actually perpetrated that violence. And that sense of shame which the woman is forced to feel by society, but also by years, decades, centuries of conditioning, I think that's where a lot of our work has to begin. How do we sort of take the sense of shame away from us? And how, therefore, then, whether it's a woman reporting that crime or a man reporting that crime, visually or verbally, in the words you use, how do you make it about the crime and not about shame, And that for me is a very important aspect. Removing shame from rape for me is something very important. Also, we are looking at language. How do we use language? Invariably, you end up saying X was raped by the minister's son. No, give the minister's son a name. He raped her. Put it in active voice. So these are small issues of language which one tackles. And the third thing that I would like to touch upon is context setting all the time. I think we should make it a practice in newsrooms that when you report a crime in Himachal Pradesh, can we always end that story by providing statistics of such crimes in Himachal Pradesh, zoom out statistics of such crimes in India, so that you constantly, rub home the fact that this is not some isolated one-off incident, that it's happening all the time, that there is a systemic failure in our society in the ways in which we deal with women. There will be more interaction, so I won't take up more of your time, but I think as we chat, one of the things that's going to come up invariably is the fact that violence in South Asia is directed against women primarily because one of the primary reasons is because women are still considered property in this society. And when women are considered property, then the need to establish ownership is always there. And that ownership is established with violence. And therefore, women also become a pawn in war, because the woman ceases to be an individual, a person. I am attacking her because I want revenge on the man. So look how much you have dehumanized the woman already. Even the rape is not directed at her, it's directed at the man. So in many ways, this is all can be traced back to the idea of women as property. I'm sure we'll touch upon some of those issues. So I'll
Thanks so much, Vaishna. I think your point about even the visuals, no, I think it doesn't go off. So I just hand it, is really well taken. And I think this is one of the things I just want to mention. Part of the project is also generating stock images, which we are going to be making available online for free. Like you said, you type image, rape, sexual assault, you get those 5 standard ones. So we are hoping when you type, you get the ones we are creating. So it's from mostly artists from Nepal, and a couple of them are here, but they're soon going to be available online. And it is going to challenge the stereotypical depiction. So looking at women as, victimized, but not as victims, that they have suffered a terrible crime and trauma, but that's not the only thing that defines them. And also looking at healing and justice seeking and overcoming trauma and all of that visually. So it's been quite challenging for us also to look at it, because I think I'm also come from the text side of journalism, where we've done, n number of workshops all the time, but you have the best reported story and you're going to press and you download this image and put it there, which just neutralizes your report totally. So I think that's also something we're trying to change. And I'll hand over to Paneerselvam now to tell us about not just Tamil media, news media, but also entertainment media, and the ways in which, especially, television, not just cinema, television also, and the ways in which I think we all know the stereotypes, but are there any examples of change? Are the newer directors and newer cinematographers looking at a different visual language to represent, say, rape?
Yes, there is definitely a departure. Before getting into it, I think that some amount of personal history will be helpful, because I've been part of the newsroom from 1984. In 1984, newsrooms never thought of even having a women's do in any of the newspaper offices. Therefore, that became a big concession when PTI had a separate women's do. It was seen as a huge concession. And that was the reality of our media organizations. Much later in Outlook, we recruited a women photographer. Her name was Gauri Gill. Gauri said that, look, when I see through the lens, I see. And when some of those guys see through the lens, there is a voyeurist gaze. That was a very, very powerful statement by her. And this happened at one of the Outlook meeting. And we were waiting for editor Vinod Mehta to come. So we asked Gauri, how do you think that you are a different photographer from others? She said that, look, when I look through the lens, I see. And when some of them look through the lens, it's a voyeuristic gaze. That stayed in my mind because it has a very, very powerful, different way of seeing. And the next one, which I would like to share, is my interaction with a person called Rajni Tiragnama in Colombo and in Jaffna. I met her in Jaffna, and she said that, read this small poem. And she just scribbled a poem and she gave it to me. And she said that you journalists want to know numbers, you want to know about sufferings, you want to have statistics. Where is the poignancy of the laws? Are we purely statistics? Now, this intervention definitely has a gender component. I don't think it will come from Rajani, the practicing doctor. It comes from Rajani, the woman who has seen the element called pain. Therefore, poignancy becomes so important. And she says that, I'm tired of dirge. I'm tired of dirge. Journalism which can have poignancy is what we need. Only journalism with poignancy is going to touch people to act. And this happened way back in 1987. In this context, what is really hurting? What is really hurting is that we refuse to have genuine diversity in our workforce, whether it's in a newsroom or in the way we produce our artwork. It's essentially a male dominated one. Therefore, if you're not going to have a diverse newsroom, you're not going to really address this issue. And we can talk about some women who have come in today as a filmmakers, but how many of them imitate the male filmmakers is the key question. Are they willing to chart out an independent trajectory? That's the next question which we have. Where we notice that there is a departure which is happening, but that departure is not enough. The power of stereotype is so overwhelming, and this power of stereotype, especially in the entertainment industry, comes through a simple idea of what sells. So they say that, okay, this sells. Right from the days of the film called Sagla Kalavalan, produced by AVM. AVM is a major film production company in this country. The person who acted in is a big star, Kamal Hassan. And the entire idea is misogynism. Misogynism is a central through which that entire film operates. And the song in that film is still date is being used to celebrate the heralding of the new year. Which means we are willing to, as Vaishnav earlier said, we are willing to grant quite a lot of space for self-inflicted violence. And we not only condone it, we normalize it. And normalizing it happens in two interesting ways. One is market, another one is that's a specific idea of I am particularly broad-minded, but some people are narrow-minded. This pseudo dichotomy, that's the one which has brought us with a 10% DWS case. That's the one which is forcing us to keep silence when the courts are not willing to hear the electoral bonds case, knowing pretty well that 2 states are going for election this December, and still the courts are not willing to hear the electoral bonds case. Given the fact that our external environment permits us to normalize certain things, despite the fact that I get terribly upset when people pull out statistics. They'll say that the number of stories written on sexual violence is X number. That is not going to add up to anything. Post Delhi gang rape developments, we have seen the number of stories going up, but that is not actually helping us in any way, because each one seems to be a statistic rather than providing what Rajani earlier called as difference between dirge and poignancy, and that poignancy has never been captured. Therefore, there is a certain amount of statistics which is true. Yes, after Justice J.S. Verma committee's recommendation, the amount of reportage per se has gone up. If you do a column centimeter analysis, you can see that it has gone up. But this column centimeter business is not going to be helpful because it's not capturing the complexities of these issues. And if that is true with media, news media, it's worse with the entertainment, because entertainment thrives on this idea of stereotypes. It feels that stereotypes is the one which is going to help them to reach a larger market. Therefore, it's no longer the Tamil market, it's a pan-Indian market. And if you want to reach a pan-Indian market, certain amount of stereotype seems to have currency. We have never challenged that these stereotypes may not have the currency. Counter stereo approaches might actually work. Those things industry is not willing to actually test it out. And industry is not willing to test it out primarily because we have lost the plurality of ownership. Even in the entertainment industry, there is a certain amount of sorry, consolidation which is happening. And this consolidation is sort of a corporate ownership consolidation, which means the multiple nodes through which different ideas can come in is getting completely erased. For instance, when I entered journalism in 1984, the largest media organization of this country was Bennett Coleman Limited. And today, the largest media industry in this country is owned by Mr. Mukesh Ambani. And the idea is Mukesh Ambani not only owns the largest media organization, but Mukesh Ambani also controls the largest delivery of technology, which is mobile. Therefore, you control the carrier and you control the content. If the carrier companies are going to be the consolidation, which we see that in the form of, that's how you see that big films, which is part of Reliance, is in cinema. The corporate control is the one which is the amount of consolidation is that we losing the multi nodes of production, and losing of the multi nodes of production means we are consciously permitting stereotypes to become the truth to which we can monetize. And that is extremely worrying. And this is not restricted to India. It's a global phenomena. We know what happens with somebody like Murdoch. Much earlier, in the 80s, when Murdoch bought Times, Murdoch meets Mrs. Thatcher, and Mrs. Thatcher tells Murdoch, look at that fellow, pointing out at Herald Evans, who was then the editor of the paper. That man thinks that he runs the paper. They were right from those days. This entire consolidation, which started around the 80s, have now reached a particular disturbing level of concentration. And this concentration happens at multiple levels. And for me, the biggest worrying aspect is the way the digital consolidation is happening. Till 2011, with the Arab Spring, we thought that it's about digital possibilities. Post 2011, it is essentially the Silicon Valley giants who are controlling our digital space. They control our algorithm, they control the way our search engines are going to show the results, and they also take away 85% of the total digital revenue. If you remove those three companies from Silicon Valley, all other content production companies of the world get only 15% of the digital revenue. What we are witnessing is, instead of digital decentralization, we are viewing a extreme digital centralization, which is extremely worrying. And that's the reason I think that we have to look at that case filed by Anuradha Bhasin in Supreme Court very closely. She filed a case against the closure of internet in Kashmir. What happened in Kashmir? The state can actually switch off your connectivity in 1 second. If we are all going to move to a new technology, and if the new technology is going to be the only way to reach news, and if that news can be switched off, let's understand the amount of centralization which is happening with this technocratic imagination. And the gender violence is also part of this technocratic imagination. And that's the reason I think that we need more and more creative ideas to confront that. And that's the reason there's another book of which, again, Lakshmi and team were part of it. It's called The Alphabet of Violence, which they did it. I have a copy of it. I can show it to you later, where impunity has been resisted through creative ways. And unless and otherwise we are able to resist impunity in a creative manner, we actually feed impunity. With that, I will take up later. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Paneer. I think we really needed this wider view, and also looking at larger forces of corporatization. And I think we tend to separate patriarchy from these larger forces. And I think it's important to weave it all together. I'm going to turn to Arulmozhi now, who will give us a view from the courts, because so often in cases of sexual violence, the refrain or the call almost is go to the police, go to the court. So if you could tell us a little bit about how such cases fare in court, particularly cases of marginalized communities, Dalit women or Adivasi women who have been violated, who have been gang raped, murdered, their families seeking justice. So if you could throw some light on that, because I think the entire project is all about justice seeking. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. So before I go into my points, I'd like to clarify that I am not dealing with the criminal cases either as a prosecutor or as a defense counsel, but as a person involved in social justice and also specifically in the interest of women issues. I have been following the cases, and whenever and wherever that our interference is required, we connect people to the authorities or to the lawyers, that those in need, to the person who can serve. And also I keep watching the cases and observe what's happening there actually. One positive information that I can share is now the special courts for sexual offenses, that's crimes against women in Tamil Nadu, are functioning in a very better way, and the number of convictions are more. The number of convictions. But then what is the strategy in analyzing the issue on the basis of conviction? Maybe a question. That is a different topic where we have to compare the cases of the convicted and the acquitted. That's a different topic. That is also a subject to be discussed. But for the victims, the number of convictions give some confidence to approach the legal system. And recently, most of the cases in the POCSO offenses, the offenders are caught and given the judgment with stringent punishments also. But still, the number of offenses reported are comparatively less to the number of offenses being committed. And recently, I took a class to the officers of various levels who are working in the police station for the welfare of the child. The Judicial Academy has conducted the training program because they felt that there is some lack of understanding and accountability with the officers who are dealing with those cases. So before starting the class or after closing the lecture, I would ask the officers, how many of the cases you have filed or you have reported are related to the children in need, the children found on the streets, children rescued from the hazardous workplaces, or from the places where they would be subjected to flesh trade. They were just looking at me Then when I ask them to give some examples of the cases which they feel successful in their experience, almost the cases which were quoted by the officers were where there was a marriage to have taken place between a 17 years old and 20 years old, and how they intercepted and how they protected the girl and saved the family. This was their experience. And they have not considered that the other cases of POCSO offenses are more important than preventing these marriages. Of course, it is also an offense, but it was that kind of information that they have shared with us. And why I am focusing on the POCSO cases. Like any marginalized community, whether it is marginalized or in the mainstream, the children as vulnerable targets are being subjected to these sexual offenses. Day by day, it is on increase. You can see either a trainer training the child for swimming or athletic efficiency or for special tuitions, whatever it is. You can just view them for a few seconds and identify what's happening. But either the children, neither they are taught, nor the parents are aware of the wrong touch. But internally, the child feels, but not able to express. After some time, it creates an impact on the girl's mind, and she keeps on thinking about it, closing her own world, getting into the other danger of online media. This is one way of how the children are facing the offense, sexual offenses, which has not been brought to light. Therefore, in those areas, we need more sensitization by creating pictures of the victims, either real or created faces like that one. And that images should invoke the human feeling of an adult. It should make a sense of responsibility that if I see such a child, it is my duty to protect the child from that atmosphere. So we need images to invoke, to provoke such feelings in the mind of a right thinking adult. Or even if he is wrong thinking, it should kindle some emotion. Therefore, there is a possibility to curtail or curb his animal instincts. This is one aspect. And the cases where the prosecution failed for so many reasons. A girl who was studying in 11th standard near Pundamalli. The girl used to be upset during Fridays. She would be almost crying, would not take food. So a teacher who was observing her consecutively for a few weeks inquired with her friends, and the friends had told the teacher that she is complaining about her mother. Then the teacher called the child and inquired what is happening. She says that on every weekend, Friday evening, my mother takes me to a place, Vellur. And I have been asked to do household duty for 2 days in a place. On Monday, she is taking me in the early morning to Chennai. Then from there, I have to come to school. and I am very tired. Then the teacher asked, why, yes, it is household course. Your mother is suffering. What to do? She says, but they are not, I'm not doing household duties. For 2 days, I have been used like this. So I feel it more painful. I don't want to go home on Friday. Then this teacher who was so responsible had reported the same to the protection officer. The protection officer in turn filed an FIR and the case was transferred. In fact, it was filed in Vellore. The child was residing in Pundamalli because the case has to be filed where the offense had taken place. This is a common theory, but there are exceptions where the case can be filed where the victim resides. And if the offense is committed outside the territorial jurisdiction of India, and that will be deemed to have been committed in India. Once the offender comes to India, he can be arrested, can be prosecuted. That is a theory, understanding, interpretation. But this case was filed in Vellore, which is so convenient to the accused. After 2 years, the case comes for trial. The child turns hostile. She says, no, I meant only household core. It was wrongly understood and written like that. And that was corroborated by the mother's witness. Then he had an honorable acquittal. No appeal was filed. When we reported this to the higher authority, they wanted to take action, call for the records. By the time the accused, who was acquitted, had passed away by cardiac arrest. So they could not proceed on appeal. Like these cases, when these cases are handled by the prosecutor in a routine manner, they don't train the witnesses. Whereas the accused come with the best lawyer, even if the accused is poor or middle class, they will arrange for money, organize it by whatever be the interest. They will pay to the best lawyer who will spend the luxurious time to analyze the case, to cross-examine the victim and the witnesses. Therefore, the accused goes scot-free. These are some of the instances where we need to focus, because mostly the rape and murder cases, even that, we require some new methodology to invoke the sympathy or responsibility from any citizen. But in these cases where there is no attention being thrown so far, have to be brought to light. In one case, I will conclude with this. In one case, a girl came to me because even we need more information. I think I felt that even we are not updated. When I came across this case, a girl was brought to me who was doing second year in a ladies' college in Chennai. The case was that she moved with a boy who had a relationship with her and taken a video and was threatening her. It appeared so simple, though it is scary. It's a straight case. So he was threatening. She wanted to take a rescue with the police intervention, but the inspector was not so sensitive. So the family brought her to me. But when I was hearing her story, it was alarming. I felt it is not a straight case of moving and taking a videograph and threatening, because the story who was that boy? How did she know him? He was a friend of her friend's brother. Friend's brother's friend. How did you, when did you meet him? They all used to come to our college in the evening while coming out from the campus, but we will be discussing with them. Okay, how did you move privately with them? They invited me for his sister's birthday. So friends, brothers, friends, sister's birthday. Okay, I went there. He invited me to make some arrangements. I went there. There was no one. They said, he said they will be coming little later. While doing the work that he told me that you are looking tired, take some juice. She says, yes, I'll take. What juice you want? He says, darboos or mango, something. So he opens the door. It is the first floor of a building. This house is situated in a crowded place. He's opening the window and ordering juice in the opposite side shop. He says that one this juice and one that juice. So there is a signal. And after taking the juice, this girl became unconscious, and at that time this video was taken. But what was surprising me, or rather shocking me, was this girl was not perturbed about the incident or even the videograph, because she was in love with him. So according to her, anyhow, she will marry him. So nothing wrong between two of us. This was her impression at that time. Then what made her to come to me is that he started forcing her to bring two new friends who are not used to sexual relationship. Then this girl has got such a good moral. She did not want to do that to her friends. Then when she was telling that, I asked her, so do you think that this is the way that you got introduced to that boy? Then she thinks, yes, probably. Okay, you refused. Then what next? If you don't want to introduce those two girls to me, you serve to 20 persons whom I show you. I don't want to do either. Now I want protection. So we took her to the commissioner. Then the commissioner directed us to the investigating agency. Something went fast. He was arrested, and the videos were reportedly deleted. He was arrested under Gundas Act, something. After some time, he came out in bail. But what happened, what was worrying us was two things. One is that this alarming situation was not realized by the authorities. It was treated as a single case. See how many persons are connected, how the situation is being twined. That was not taken into account. The other one is the girl's version of telling things. In fact, we three lawyers who are above 50s, we were so scared to hear that, but she was not. She was very casually narrating it. And then we asked her, then why did you go there? Why did you do this? This as a parent, we take the parental role. Why did you? Then she says, ma'am, what is this? Friends with benefits is very common nowadays. We know that. We were what the word you use? Because according to us, friendship is so divine, so sacred, so top of something. Yeah, there is no benefit. The benefit path of friendship kadayadu. That's how we were brought up. But now, if it is happening among youngsters, then where it leads them? We are not aware of it. So there are more things to know, more areas to focus, and more incidents and issues to be brought to the knowledge to create awareness. I think all these things have to be depicted in a way where it will not cater to the baser instincts. That is more important. Because once a rape and video case is reported, people go and search for it. That kind of goodness is within our people. Even the Kashmir Kathua child's case, the most searched video was the child's video. So whichever case we feel sensational, the people otherwise take it to sense. So it should be depicted in a way to create awareness, responsibility, accountability, and your duty to the humanity. Not to cater to the baser instincts. But of course, the second thing, all of us are aware, but we have to work towards the goal more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you've brought up so many points about, law enforcement and the way in which maybe media and activists and civil society can look at the situation beyond statistics, like humanizing in a way. Also, I mean, there are so many legal limitations to even depiction, like you mentioned the Kathua case. I remember when it first happened, there were lots of posters with that girl's photograph. And in fact, in Bangalore, we had done a protest outside a very busy street. And a lot of us were actually taken to the police station. So they said, how did you use the name? When the name had come in the media by then. It was only a high court order, which then said that the media should not use the name of the, a girl. So I think there are a lot of challenges, even in terms of humanizing. And just a comment even about younger women, particularly becoming sexually active or, wanting to have interactions which men and young men have always had without consequences. I think the question also here is, how does one ensure that they are not vulnerable to exploitation? Because the right to say no, the right to display lack of consent also goes hand in hand with saying yes and expressing sexual desire in a sort of safe and supportive atmosphere, which I think is completely missing in Indian and I think South Asian society in general. So that is definitely a point even we are trying to bring out, that we are not promoting a society or a discourse without sexual desire, but sexual desire with consent and with dignity and with full agency. So I think, thank you so much for this look from the ground and from the law enforcement point of view. I think we have about 10 minutes for discussion, and if you'd like to comment, ask questions, share anything, please feel free to pass this mic around. Is there another mic for this?
I'm not expert like you, but I want to tell something. For example, the man who works in factories or physical things and tough work, with metals, with fire, in furnaces and all. Naturally, by the time he finished the work, he is very aggressive. There is some aggression in him. So that he has to transfer somewhere. So that's why he takes it on his wife or sister or mother. So what I thought was, how about counseling the women in the house? That is the wife. Some counselors go, and I mean psychological counseling, go and tell, look, he's all like that, so you have to behave like this. If you tell them, because they're not very intelligent, women are very emotional, So if emotional is nothing wrong, emotional being. I'm also emotional, yeah. So this cannot totally wife beating, murder, whatever things, it cannot stop. I think at least it can reduce if you counsel both the men and the woman how you have to behave in the home with the wife or the family. Thank you.
Thank you. I think counseling the men is a great idea. Absolutely great. And I wish one would have more of that. Yeah. Yes, I think counseling men.
I was in a friend's house 20 years back. Husband came. She started, oh, this, neighbors are doing that. She said, please wait. I'm just coming. No, we have lots of time. Tell me all the problems after 1 hour.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, Robert? Yeah.
Well, thank you for your comment as well, but like the onus should not also be on women to counsel, and I think that's a difficult way of looking at domestic issues or any issues that can come in the household as well. But what my question was, that was just a comment about what you were saying, but my question was more about disinformation, and you could talk about it through journalistic lens or through a lens of how the law applies. For example, in Nepal, there is a case right now about a famous cricketer who's arrested because he had relations with a minor, right? And the online discourse has been very troubling because as soon as that report came out, because of his legacy, quote unquote, or for his sporting ability for any reason, a lot of people, even in the online community, are like, oh, it's they've already made up their mind, right? That he's innocent. So when they get disinformation, it's a confirmation bias, right? So that they see news that there's a confirmation bias that he's innocent, and then they continue that. So how do we fight this disinformation, especially? And also, like, just an aside, a couple of podcasters in Nepal have termed this kind of reporting where there's immense sympathy for the man as himpathy. And so that's also something that we need to, as people who are working in the media, be cognizant of our biases as well. But if you could talk a little bit about disinformation as well, that'd be especially from a lawyer and law as well as a journalistic point of view as well.
Right. The kind of disinformation you speak of and the kind of confirmation bias that you speak of, both are very much facets of social media, and also media as practice on social channels. For example, it could be a journalist who makes a YouTube interview or a presentation of sorts, right? It's not usually a part of mainstream media, because mainstream media still plays by certain, rules such as the tone of neutrality, you don't take sides, etc., you present the news and so on. So when it comes to social media, the easy thing for us to say that social media has created many of these problems, but I don't think so. Social media is simply magnifying what are existing cultural tropes, existing cultural biases have now gotten a space on social media, which allows them enormous power. Right. So that voice which says, oh, this is the man and he's innocent and he's such a great scholar or whatever, so he can't possibly be guilty of rape. That opinion existed all the time. My uncle would have said it, your uncle, somebody else. It existed all. Now it gets a platform. It gets a very easy platform, and it gets very quick magnification, and it just becomes viral. So it becomes very ubiquitous. It's very in your face. It's very powerful. So we tend to think that instances of such violence or instances of such attitudes towards women and their problems is something new. It's not at all new. It's entrenched in society. What we should worry about is the fact that social media allows the weaponization of this in a certain kind of way. For me, one very interesting aspect in the case that you spoke of was I actually thought that woman was very empowered. The fact that she wasn't fazed by the rape. I mean, obviously it was rape. She was given a spiked drink, but she wasn't fazed by it. I think that's enormous empowerment, because she said, I was in love with him. I might have anyway made love with him. I might have anyway slept with him. So I'm not worried about that. But when he's trying to weaponize that and blackmail me, then I'm breaking it into a police complaint. So for me, I thought that was a very powerful response from the woman. And the other reason why I found that powerful was that the woman refuses to make that rape the essential part of her, that rape ceases to define her, So the ability for women, the power for women to go beyond the physical act of the rape and to say that this physicality, my body, will never define me. The violence done to my body will never be what moves me, but I will act against it. I will act against the weaponization of this act of sex, and I will stop it. That for me is a very powerful statement. So for me, the worry about social media is that it's offering all sorts of new avenues to weaponize sexual assault against women. You have the whole idea of the what do you call that? The revenge thing, no? The revenge porn. That's right. So if I don't accept a man, or I break up with a man, the man posts all the photographs he has of me, all the videos he has of me. Now the videos, to make those videos, to make sexually explicit videos with a man that you are intimate with is not per se a crime, and it ought not to be treated as a crime. But because constantly you can make it into a quick thing, which then becomes socially, that sexual act has two people participating, a man and a woman. When it's made public, there is no stigma attached to the man, all the stigma attached to the woman. That is what we should question. Why? I mean, so what if there is a rape video? Why? Both of them are in it. It's an act of consent. But all of society's weight comes on the woman because she's in that sexual act. So that's for me the root of the problem. The root that we define a woman's participation in the sexual act vis-a-vis a man's participation with very, very different lens, So whether we're talking about cinema, whether we're talking of social media, whether we're talking of the way the law acts, in many ways, I feel that we never go to the root of the problem, which is what is society's response to how a woman can bear herself in society, how she can walk through society with none of these things attached, able to leave a stain on her, which is never is allowing. It's never allowing the woman to walk away. I always have this example of this film that came. I don't know how many of you saw this film. It was 4 films called something Love in a Metro. It's the short films, yeah. So it's fascinating for me, and I'll just share this quickly with you. One of the short films has a woman professor, older professor in her 50s. She has an affair with a male student who's 18 or whatever his age is. And the affair breaks up. They sleep together, I think, for one night or so on. And they break up and then they move on. And she makes it very clear to him, I've slept with you one night. There's no love involved. So don't imagine there's love or not. Go ahead and have your own life. I go off and have my own, right? Movie progresses. The male student finds a girlfriend. The woman professor gets agitated. She gets jealous. She gets upset. She's responding. This was made, and for me, this whole thing was so problematic, Even when the woman is supposedly, quote unquote, in a powerful position of being the older professorial figure, she is still the one who is going through enormous amounts of emotional trauma because she slept with a man. What's going on? Just reverse the scenario. If the professor had been male and the student had been female, all hell would have broken loose. That woman's life the filmmaker would have projected that woman's life as having come to an end. She will never be allowed to walk off and say, I had sex with my professor, a big deal. If we could reach that point somehow, for me, that would be a great triumph. For me, that is somehow this whole sexual violence thing. Sorry, guys.
You want to answer that? Quickly, because I think the screening is.
See, I wish I was an indoctrinated parrot to answer these questions, because really I'm not sure how these things happen. Therefore, I would like to refrain from speculating on it, because part of my training as journalist is let's go by evidence-based reportage. And for this, I don't have sufficient evidence-based reportage. Therefore, I'm not going to speculate on this.
No, a lot of the law assumes that what is seen in media, not just law, but I think there's a lot of activism around it also. So there is a lot of, move to ban this and ban that because there's this belief that it's affecting, people in a certain way. And as Pani said, there is no evidence yet to substantiate that kind of thing. There aren't enough studies to show that even anecdotally or research or statistics, that violence on screen, directly translates to violence of the field. But certainly, I think what it does contribute to, not violence per se, but misogyny and anti-women or anti-Dalit or anti-Adivasi or anti-Muslim portrayals day in and day out in the news media, on TV, in the mainstream cinema, affects those who are at the margins. They begin to feel like they are not citizens of this land, or this world at all, because you're constantly bombarded with these kind of images. So I definitely think it does have that sort of effect of marginalizing them further. So I don't know if that, yeah.
I think it's all right. That man beating a woman on stage, on the screen is a way of saying, hey, it's okay, your favorite hero did it on screen. So in some ways, I think if we go back to the whole idea of normalization and we just bring the normalization thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you all, Vaishna, Arumoli, Paneer. Very interesting discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience.